Assalamualaikum and a very good evening to everyone. Before we started, my name is Syauqina Nasuha binti Zainuddin. My metric number is 01D8019F1121. So for today, we are going to do a forum discussion about our case study and also two cases in professional ethics subject. First of all, I'm going to introduce our another two panel. First panel is Ayati, anak perempuan Akid. Metric number is 01D8019F1094. Another one is Noor Atira binti Cik. Metric number is 01D8019F1089. Okay, for today, we are going to discuss two cases. The first one is Taiko looting executive style. And then the next one is spying on HP directors. So before we begin, I'm going to explain a little bit about Taiko looting executive cases. I'm sorry, wait. We are going to start with Taiko International. Taiko International is actually a security company which they make a security system incorporated in Republic of Ireland, and then they have a headquarters in Princeton, New Jersey, United States. And also it composed two major business segments, which is security solutions and also fire protection. So for the next one, I wanted to ask Atira, what do you know about these cases? What can you explain about these cases?
Okay, what can I explain about these cases is about the director, which is Dennis Kozlowski, was a CEO of Taiko International. He was ruling along often using company money, and then for his personal life, he taking $2 million for his wife's birthday, and then macam ni, Taiko ni, apa yang saya faham, CEO dia menggunakan duit syarikat untuk kepentingan peribadi dia sendirilah. Macam contoh tadi, dia ambil duit syarikat untuk buat birthday party isteri dia saja yang bernilai $2 million. And then dia ada juga
He also do illegal transaction, kan?
Yes.
So kita boleh cakap yang the CEO in Taiko, which is what you said earlier, Dennis Kozlowski ni, dia buat banyak illegal financial transaction dekat dalam company, and also a lot of thing berkaitan duit lah, money, which is dalam case ni Taiko yang banyak kena lah, the company Dennis jadi CEO kan. So korang tahu tak, or like both of you can actually explain what is a few things yang the CEO, which is Mr. Kozlowski, did to like sepanjang dia bekerja di sana, like the improper conduct yang dia buat.
Improper conduct by the the CEO, that is Dennis Kozlowski, in this case, that Kozlowski was involved in questionable financial transaction. They were not included in the company financial reports. Just like Atira said before, that he also expanded the problem when his second wife received money diverted from the company. Okay, beside that, court proceeding proved that Dennis, the CEO, stole millions of dollars from Tyco, and that his illegal financial transactions were extensive. Okay, other than that, based on the improper conduct in regulation programs, under certain executive officer, including Ms. Kozlowski, former CFO Mark Swartz, and former Chief Corporate Counsel Mark Belnick used the company regulation program to take non-qualifying interest-free loans and authorized benefits that were not generally available to all salary. Under this program, Ms. Kozlowski improperly borrowed exploitingly in non-qualifying regulation loans to purchase real estate and other properties. Okay, you guys want to add anything?
Yes, I want to add. And then another improper conduct by the Tyco is the Tyco the Tyco com bonus misappropriation. So Mr. Kozlowski caused Tyco to pay a special unapproved bonus to 51 employees who had relocation loan with the company. And then the bonus was calculated to forgive the relocation loans and to pay compensation sufficient to discharge all the tax liability due as a result of the forgiveness of those loans. And then another improper conduct also the ADT automotive bonus misappropriation, which is Mr. Kozlowski authorized Tyco to pay cash, award restricted shares of Tyco common stock, and purportedly forgive additional loan and makes related tax payment to approximately 17 Tyco officer and employees, even though the relocation loans of each these 12 person had already been paid in full. So, Syauqina, do you want to add any improper conduct?
Aside from that, I also know about these cases where there is also improper conduct on the key employee loan program, which is also a certain executive officer borrow money for purpose actually other than the payment of taxes due upon the vesting of restricted shares or borrowed in excess of the maximum amount that actually permitted under the program. So this Mr. Kozlowski, by a large margin, actually a greater abuser of this program because he had taken over actually 200 KEL loans, and some of them are millions of dollars, some of them are actually like as small as $100, and then his total borrowing were over $250 million. And also they said that 90% of this loan that he take, actually he fund into his personal lifestyle, including speculating real estate, acquisition of antiques, and also furnishing for his property, which is we know it was not good, not ethical, because he's supposed to be a CEO, but then we know that he was like steal money from his own company, something like that. So for the next one, I'm gonna ask a little bit that in this case, we already know that there's a lot of red flags, or we we're gonna say that unethical things that Tyco board of director actually, sorry, Tyco CEO, which is Dennis Kozlowski too, actually do. So can you elaborate, or can you guys actually explain why actually like the board of director, sorry, why actually the employee or the executive that involved in this case cannot actually reveal this case, or like to go along with this case, doesn't tell anyone or nothing.
Okay. First, that I want to say that company Tyco management accountant should have raised concern about several item, including the Danish Kozlowski lavish party, and even the CEO invite client, frequent and sizable loans to executive, and compensation that was out of line. Okay. Beside that, the internal auditor in the company also should raise concern of seeing the same information keep repeating. And um, other than that, board of director also should monitor management compensation and ask for prioritization of expenses. Okay, Atira, can you explain about other than Tyco management accountant, internal auditor, external auditor, and board of director?
Okay, Yati. So the first one is the Tyco management accountants. So the CEOs, lavish parties, interest-free loans, and unauthorized benefit to executive and compensation. The second one is Tyco internal auditor. Raise concern of seeing the same information keep repeating. And the third one is Tyco external auditor, which is the unusual loan programs. And last one is Tyco board of directors, monitor management compensation and ask for pre-authorization and expenses. I want to add a lead. I want to add a more. um, the possible reason many Tyco employees willing to go along quietly with the looting by senior executives because Dennis is their CEO and has power to dismiss employee easily. And then for the example, the TICOM bonus misappropriation, the employee who received this bonus were led by Mr. Kowalski to believe that they were part of board approved program and they didn't know the truth. So um, and then employee that receive bonuses and other employees may have been unaware, naive, or to concern with avoiding retaliation. So that's all from me.
Thank you both for the information earlier. So the conclusion we are going to take for these cases is that as a CEO or as an employee of the company, we should be ethical. We should be follow the laws and regulations, especially like this Dennis Kozlowski, who their CEO supposed to be tunjukkan or like bagi contoh kan dekat employee the right things to do in the company and so on. But because of these cases, so employee mestilah fikir macam, oh kalau CEO aku pun boleh buat, so they can took along ataupun so on kan. So after this we gonna know that if something's happen like this, maybe we going to bagi tahu another pihak untuk the improper conduct yang company kita dah jalankan and so on. So I think that was all for the first case. So next one, we are going to go into our second case, which is the spying on HP directors. So before that, I'm going to also explain a little bit about HP company. HP, which means Hewlett Packard, is a computer hardware company, was an American multinational information technology company, and was headquartered in Palo Alto, California. So before we moving further, we're gonna start with how these cases started on. Start with Patricia Dunn, who is the chairman. And we know it started with her. So next I'm going to call on Ayati. Can you explain first what is the spying on HP directors cases are?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again, Syauqina?
Okay. I want you to explain a little bit on how the spying on HP director cases were.
Oh, okay.
What is happening with these
Okay.
cases?
Okay. In um, this case about it's more about in the whistleblower, right? Okay. For in this case, that is um apa ni, we can say that um the in um the involved investigator by HP board of member and 9 journalists, including reporters for CNET, the New York and Wall Street Journal, to get telephone calling record used to try determining the source of the leak. In other words, we can say that is pretexting, right?
It's true, but before that, I try to explain a little bit more on the case. Okay, so basically, what happened on spying on HP director cases is where Patricia Dunn, which is their chairman, she hired an independent electronic security because there is a leak of confidential details, which is HP long-term strategy. So Patricia Dunny, as a chairman, he hired this security investigator to determine the source of leak of the confidential details. But then the press revealed the independent or like the security investigator actually spied on HP board members and also several journalists, sorry. And then they do what this call like pretexting. So can you guys explain more on what is the pretexting mean?
Okay, so uh, the definition of pretexting is method of inventing a scenario to convince victims is it victim to divulge information they should not be good will I'm sorry, my pronunciation is not too correct.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay. And then pretexting also leave a victim into a vulnerable situation and trick them into giving private information.
So we're gonna say that actually pretexting was not a right thing to do, right? Because they actually trick people into believing they did, or like they actually someone, but then turns out it was not the real identity of them, right? So how actually the pretexting happen in this case? Like what the security investigator do?
So for this case, the investigator do the involved investigator and no, no. The investigation targeted the January 2006 communication of HP directors, including not only the records of phone calls and emails from HP, but also the records from their personal accounts. And then the investigation employed tactics that range from the controversial to the not necessarily legal. And then the tactics include using private investigator to impersonate HP board members, and then to trick phone companies into handing over the calling records of those board members' personal phone accounts. So Ayati, you want to add some more?
Okay. Um, the record of net journalists was similarly obtained too. Okay. With no more than home address and account number or other pieces of personal information. An investigator or pretexter may obtain personal information from phone companies pretending to be somebody else.
Okay, so we already know that this pretexting was not a right thing to do, especially as a private investigator. Even though you are called private investigator, it's still not a right thing to do, where you pretend to be somebody else and then get all the information that you want. Okay, so I'm going to ask the next question. We know that in this case that Patricia Dunn actually bring in the private investigation to investigate about the leak of confidential information. But it turns out that the investigator did a wrong thing to get the info. So for you guys information, for you guys opinion, in your guys opinion, are the chairman of board directors allowed to initiate investigations of weaknesses in the company's internal control system?
Okay. First, based on discussion, the chairman of the board of directors are allowed to initiate investigation of weakness in a company internal control. This because a board of directors is responsible for establishing accountability for company management and ensuring reasonable internal control through independent third-party review of the company. Furthermore, director also should regularly have to conduct review of the effectiveness of the company on group internal control system.
Okay, thank you.
In other words,
Yeah.
It's okay, Syauqina. You can continue.
Okay. So thank you for the information. So I'm going to move on to the next question. For Atira, are you actually thinks that the strategy of pretexting doing by the pre-independent security investigator are actually a right thing to do? Or in the ethical, what are you actually thinks about this pretexting? Is it acceptable or unacceptable?
So for me, the strategy of pre-texting is acceptable for strengthen a company internal control. And then based on the consequentialism ethic theory, any method that can bring benefit to company will acceptable. Okay, consequentialism ethic theory is a theory that says whether something is good or bad depends in its outcomes. And then an action that brings about more benefit and harms is good, while an action that causes more harm than benefit is not. Based on HP case, practitioner hire an electronic security teams to determine sources of the leaked confidential details, which is HP long-term strategy. So we do know that if this confidential information get leaked, it may do direct financial damage, deterioration of company's reputation, loss of customers, partners, suppliers, and also product markets.
So thank you for that. And then the next one is, because we know about these HP directors, what happened and so on, how the whistleblowing, sorry, how the pretexting happened and stuff. So can you guys give us an example? What is the most recent rule on corporate governance that HP can actually practice to strengthen their company internal control system?
So, Ayati, you want to talk? Okay. Okay, for the example, most recent rules on the corporate governance is first, recognize that good governance is not just about compliance. Next, evaluate board performance. So that's all for me. Ayati, you want to add another point?
Sure. Okay. Other than that, the HP can recognize that the governance of risk is a board responsibility and prioritize risk management.
Prioritize. Prioritize. Okay.
Prioritize risk management.
So from your guys' answer, it's gonna say that the board of directors or what the board of directors actually have to pay attention to their company, because the corporate they need to strengthen their corporate governance, because they also need to strengthen the internal control system in their company, so that these things does not happen, like how the HP director cases. And then they also need to evaluate more on their employees, on their directors, who do the right thing, who do the wrong thing, and we need to follow the rules, right? So I think that's all for our discussion today. So thank you so much, both of you, for giving cooperation and also your time for doing this forum discussion this evening. Such a lovely day today, such a great information, and yeah, thank you so much.
All right, Syauqina, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.